So let's go back to Chinese medicine a little bit. Are there like a couple of things that you've brought over from your knowledge of Chinese medicine other than looking at tongues that you use pretty frequently that wouldn't be something most people know about?
Yeah, well, I would say a lot. I mean, every diet I create for somebody is based more, it still is a combination of functional and Western, of functional medicine and TCM, but my diets, what I recommend for people lean slightly TCM. And I mean, Mikhaila, I've treated like thousands of patients, if not over 10,000. And I have found in this, using Chinese medicine in terms of those dietary recommendations is the most effective thing I've seen for helping somebody heal. Because like when I was really early in my career, I'm talking about like my first year, I put people more on like, I was like, hey, gluten-free. So like I would work with kids in the autistic community. We'd go gluten-free, casein-free. And then I started saying, okay, well that helps, but still it's not doing as much as I want. And then I got turned on to the GAPS diet. And that was a really big step forward. And I found, okay, this GAPS diet is really great for a lot of people, especially with, gut microbiome issues, neurodegenerative issues, autoimmune issues. And then from there, I kind of moved forward into more of a Chinese medicine diet, which actually has a GAPS diet is really good for still a lot of people, but it sort of taught me to recommend certain foods for certain things. So I'll just to give you an example, like if I know somebody has a liver issue, I'm going to recommend they do a lot of steamed vegetables and a lot of foods rich in glycine like bone broth. And so they're just very specific foods for activating the liver. So foods that are green and sour tend to be best for detoxification, along with a little bitter. If somebody has a cardiovascular issue, the best thing they can do are bitter foods, bitter and red. Those really, so think about tomatoes or an herb like hawthorn or pomegranate, like very healing for the heart and cardiovascular system. If somebody has a digestive system, upper GI, that's going to be more orange foods. It's going to be sweet potato and pumpkin, and even beef would fall into both the heart and the upper digestion category. And then the immune system are foods that are white and light yellow. So think about this, like when somebody's sick with a cold or flu, it's like you give them chicken soup, which is yellow broth, or ginger herbal tea, which is yellow, or garlic or onion or miso. These are all yellow foods that activate the immune system. Pears in Chinese medicine are recommended for respiratory issues. And then the last one would be, and the immune issues are also tied to colon. And then the last one is hormonal issues. That you tend to recommend a lot of, or adrenal issues. That's a lot of mushrooms, which are multiple colors, a lot of purple and blue and black foods tend to be more nourishing for those. So based on the condition, I use kind of foods and flavors as sort of some of the medicinal ways of treating different conditions. How did
that culture figure out that different colored foods impact different organs?
Well,
it's so different. It's definitely different from what I've learned, but obviously it seems to work. And that Linda person definitely was able to cure things. So like, why does that work? Do they know why it works?
Yeah. So it's the very same reason how you found out that the lion diet works for you and what doesn't work. Only what you've had is we've had thousands of physicians. Imagine thousands of physicians for 1,000 years.
Yeah.
Testing and trying and paying close attention to patients and working with them, doing millions of individual case studies and being able to dial in and figure out these patterns. I mean, one of the things that your dad talks about, I love that he talks about this, is like, well, how do you know what truth is? Or how do you know what the best decision is to make? One of the things I heard him say was, well, who are the top 5 investors in the world? Okay. Where do they overlap? And what's true of that they all say these are the financial principles that work, right? Same thing with maybe, so I think it's a very similar thing. As they started noticing these patterns between, sour activates the liver. Bitter activates bile release and clearing dampness. Okay, well, all bitter foods must do that to a degree. Well, what's the most bitter? What's the least? Okay, what happens when you have something that's bitter and sweet? It's going to have this impact. So they were just
Interesting.
Yeah.
So it's got to be compounds in the bitter taste that seem to activate certain parts of the body or something?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So we know that sour does something like every probiotic food ever
Yeah.
is sour.
Yeah.
I mean, and so that's very directly effective to creating a certain environment for microbes will grow. Now, in somebody with SIBO or certain types of histamine reactions, anyways, that's a whole
That's
different
got to
topic.
be
You don't
why
want
I
that,
can't
but
do probiotics. It's got to be something like SIBO. I
Yeah,
thought this
yeah,
for
yeah.
years. It was like,
Yeah.
why can't I can't tolerate any probiotics? Like, yeah, it's got to be something like that.
yeah,
Cool.
yeah.
Wow.
Well, let me say that there is a type of probiotic that's less prone to being sour, and they're called soil-based organisms. They're known as spore-forming bacteria. And so people, not always, but people with SIBO or microbial issues that have histamine reactions, they tend to do better than with the soil-based organisms like Bacillus subtilis than they do the food-based probiotics, because the soil-based tend to have less of an affinity towards sour. Part of the sourness helps them survive and grow, versus the soil-based organisms don't really need that. And the soil-based organisms are transient. I mean, they just pass through your system. Some of the food-based will have more of an impact on hosting and living in your system.
Interesting. So that's like Spore Biotics.
Yeah.
That company. Okay. Cool.
Well, it's not there is probably a company, but it's just a type. It's a type of
Spore
probiotic
Biotics is a type.
that a few companies will include in their products.
Interesting. So, okay, let's talk SIBO for a bit, because I feel like there are quite a few. I'm pretty sure that's one of my problems. I know that my mom just did a SIBO treatment and fixed her like crazy things have been happening with her. Like the Lion diet put her arthritis into remission. She was doing well, but her digestion was never good. We're like, well, something's still going on with gut. And she's done this protocol. And one of the treatments that helped was SIBO treatment. Mm-hmm. What do you do? It's more the natural route for SIBO.
Yeah. So for SIBO, and this is where the way that I treat patients, I try and be incredibly holistic in terms of also looking at the mental and spiritual aspect of the person. And so what I found in SIBO patients, and this goes back to Chinese medicine, is there is a component of stress that is very highly related to SIBO in most people. This isn't across the board, but I would say it's the sort of person who is, you're on all the time. You just never switch it off. And that could be even doing good things, but it's just like constantly like, moving forward. And so I think in SIBO, that exacerbates SIBO, is that not turning it off. And so like, for instance, one of my biggest recommendations is when you eat, don't look at a screen, don't have anything. I want you to take 30, 40 an hour to eat your meal. Like I want you to sit there and chew.
I've had multiple
relax.
podcast guests that are like, how long do you chew? Yeah. It's like not very long.
Oh yeah, it's big for SIBO. Taking deep breaths, seeing what's going outside, having a conversation but it's like slowly eating, chewing, and creating a lot more of those enzymes via your saliva. That is one really, really big thing that helps. Licorice root extract before meals. You can do DGL. That is one of the ancient recommendations in TCM for helping with SIBO over time. And then, we're in a world today that's just, let me say the other thing would be simple, smaller meals. Eating big meals is hard on the digestive system. Doing astragalus tends to be good, but doing they would tend to recommend a white rice, like a jasmine or basmati, with something like fish, like just something that moves through your system more quickly, would tend to be recommended too, or that's what I would recommend for somebody with SIBO. And then there are going to be other things. I would recommend a soil-based organism probiotic, I wouldn't recommend any of the more food-based, like the bifidobacterium or the lactobacillus species, more of that soil-based. And then in certain cases, then we need to look at clearing out a lot like H. pylori and bad organisms that maybe have just taken over. And in that case, I like to start off as natural as possible. I mean, listen, if I have a patient, and this is so rare, but if I do have somebody that's an extremely hard case, I may then work with an integrative practitioner, and maybe they would get on something conventional, like an antibiotic for a period of time, who can dial in the right thing, like we talked about earlier with what you've talked about. But I think generally, I try and do like caprosolic acid, grapeseed extract, ozone, via like an EBU or a 10-pass. I tend to do more of those types of things. And then I try and get higher and higher doses of the soil-based organisms. And yeah, I found when we kind of work on reducing stress, eating more slowly, taking more walks after your meals, very specific diet that's going to move through the system more quickly, that's worked in a lot of cases.